Hello, new product time, and it's about cameras that can handle Gyroflow. As you know, I've been messing around with the Runcam Thumb and the Runcam Thumb Pro, trying to see how I can get those stabilized on Gyroflow and see how the footage looks essentially. We have a new camera. There are already some other cameras that produce gyro data which you can use with them, but I got contacted by Hawkeye that now produce a naked version of their camera which works with Gyroflow, and they sent it to me and said, would you like to test it? And I said yes, why not? It is here. It is called the Hawkeye 4K Naked Cam. It's a bit of a strange one, this, and you can kind of tell by the instructions in this picture here, which shows a board and a camera. This was, I think, originally a sort of FPV camera and HD camera in one, which never worked pretty well as an FPV camera because it was always a bit ooky. A very bad display, but as a recording camera it works pretty well. And what they've done, rather than have like the board and the camera, they've gone ahead and they've installed it in sort of one thing. So you've got this sort of regular FPV looking lens here, and then you've got the board which has been sort of turned on its side and jumped up like that. So this is to fit a regular GoPro style mount. This is something a bit smaller and thinner. I don't know if it's quite as small as the original stuff was for the Runcam Thumb, but yeah, so you've got that with a sort of standard lens. You will notice you've got here USB-C and you've got various ports here. There is an interesting amount of cables in this little bag here. First off, you've got cables like this that say DJI on them, on the basis that I think you can plug into the USB-C and plug this into your DJI goggles, I think that's the idea. Although it's a little bit short, you'd be like that. You've also got one like this, which is more useful. We'll come to this one in a second. Again, plugs in there, and it's got a AV out. So when you're trying to set things up on the menu and stuff, that's a good thing to use. To power it, you've got some balance adapters. Interesting thing about this is, unlike the Thumb, which needed 5 volts, this needs at least 12 volts, I think. So you've only got here 3S, 4S and 6S adapters, and the 6S adapter actually has the pin so it takes the 4S voltage, so it won't take a pure 6S battery. You'll have to reduce that slightly. So how are you going to install it on smaller ones? I'm not sure at the moment. Anyway, what you'd get is you'd have that installed there, and then you'd have that sort of connected to the battery. You can also, comes with this board here, that would plug in there, and then you've got this adapter to use to go through the menu to do stuff. You've got a nicely protected SD card there with a little protector for the slot. Also in the package there was this little TPU thingy, I guess to work as like a little lens protector or something to work out for the sun, and some sort of ND filter type thing, which looks like, yeah, that just pushes over the top. It makes it look bigger and obviously blocks out some of that light and reduces the frame rate for you. Also found a spare ribbon cable in case it's broken, and some mounting screws for the different sizes, which is super handy. Now, in addition to this, this isn't obviously needed to use it, but it's quite handy. They sent me this little package which is called the Little Pilot Flight Master, and I was like, what's this? And what it is a tiny little screen. Basically, you've got an internal receiver in it, so you can tune into FPV signals, or if you're using this cable, you can plug into the AV socket, and you can then plug this in and you can go through that and do all your settings that way. You've also got in here this antenna and this sort of thing for hooking up to something else, I guess. Goggles perhaps, so you receive from that, go with goggle in, who knows. Anyway, let's go to close up, let's plug all this in and see how it works, and then we can decide how we're going to mount it on a quad. Much like the Runcam Thumb, with its internal gyro, what you don't want is something shaky that's going to mess with this. So we need to mount on something soft, which is an interesting problem, because this is obviously its own material, which is quite hard. So we'll mount onto a TPU mount for a GoPro. What we can't do is go onto sort of a very small Cinewoop type quad, because we need 12 volts to run it. So we'll have to go big, go 5-inch, see how it works, see what happens, and yeah, let's go from there. Right, okay, so we've connected up the monitor to the camera. So I'm going to plug the balance lead of a 4S battery in there, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this guy on, and we can see some stuff. So let's try and just zoom in on this. I'm afraid I haven't got anything very interesting to look at here. Some of this is coming from the screen, like AV2 and 3.81, whoops, which is the voltage, and then we've got obviously the Hawkeye and the voltage there, and that thing coming from this. So to go into the menu, I'm going to press the left button, and then we can change things like resolution. At the moment it's 1080p50, and you can go no gyro, 2.5k p50, so a bunch of things. It's interesting, it's got 30 and 50 instead of like 60. So loop recording hopefully is, I want it off, but I suppose wide dynamic range on, exposure 0 essentially, audio on, time lapse, no we don't want a time lapse, metering, sharpness, contrast, auto recording off, fixed frame rate on. You know what that means. Electronic shutter, auto. Well, you can do quite a lot here. So we're logging gyro calibration, place the machine stable horizontally and keep it stable. Does it mean that? Press OK. Please wait. Calibration fail. Okay, well don't worry about it, I'll come back to that. Okay, we've also got, we can set the date time. Okay, I'll do that later. Auto power off. Beep sound, you might want to turn it off. Language, frequency, okay. We're 50 Hz here. TV mode, NTSC PAL. TV ratio, we've got 69, you can also go to 4:3. ISO is auto. Colour is colour. Got white balance, denoising, FOV, large at the moment. Image rotation, good point, is off. Voltage adjust, don't need to think about. Oh, that's handy, and you can turn the OSD off. So in this case, I'm going to have my, mass storage. Okay. In this case, I'm going to have my regular OSD there, so I don't really need to think about that. So in terms of image rotation, if that is the GoPro side, and do that, yep. So that is that way up. So on the camera itself, we've actually got 2 buttons here. We've got the M. Oh, there we go. We got a flashing light when we hit OK. Press it again and it stops. So that seems to start recording on off. I know what M does, but I noticed when I was just pressing random buttons here trying to figure stuff out, if I pressed the up, it would go to photo mode. Down is the regular filming mode, and it also, depending on the light there, this is mentioned in the instructions, your light basically denotes what mode you're in. Now I think I need to put the OSD back on just to make sure I'm not in photo mode anymore. Let's quickly do that. Oh yeah, I seem to be in photo mode because it's talking about image size, burst, quality, sharpness. That's better. So if I put the OSD back on quick, you can see now that we've got the resolution up the top corner there, and if I press that up button, down button, it goes to 24M for, I guess, megapixels. If I press the up button, it goes back to being in video mode. Right, so, okay, so now I know that. I shall turn the OSD off again. And fairly confident we can work this. It's just a case now of figuring out how we're going to do stuff. It seemed to say EIS written on it, and you can jig it around on that, and it seemed fairly smooth. So, you know, we live in hope that we're going to get something good of it. So, yeah, next off, I'll try and mount it. I'd like to start off by mounting it on a smaller one, because I think it's a bit kinder to the gyro. But, well, we'll see if that's possible. Let's get on with it. Check it out, the sun came back. Summer has returned, just briefly. It's not as hot, but it's fairly still. It's a beautiful, clear day. And we're going to fly. So, as you might expect, we're here for the little Hawkeye Naked camera. And after doing some testing on the desk there, I realised two things. Firstly, what am I talking about? I don't care if the OSD is on or off, so I turn that back on, because of course that's not going to be my live view. This is just if it was the live view. So having it on means if I need to check the settings, it's a lot easier, so I turn it back on. The other thing is I thought, oh no, this needs at least 12 volts. I'm not going to be able to power this from a small quad, but this little 2.5-inch Pavo uses 4S batteries. So what I'm going to do is fly it on this. You see at the moment I've got the ND filter installed, which is, I think, probably useful. The sun's pretty low, it's just up there. But I'll try a couple of flights without it as well. And because this is a standard GoPro mount, I have to say it looks a little bit sort of, it's going to catch the wind, but it's very light. I don't know how that's going to work. A GoPro catches the wind, but it's heavy, so it's not so much of a problem. There's also a slight problem fitting this in and getting like the battery not to bash into it and stuff when you've got the angle. After I fly on this one, I'm going to fly on this one, which are exactly the same two quads I flew the Runcam Thumb and the Thumb Pro on, so it's a really good way of testing stuff out. But let's get going. Now, before we get going, you're probably wondering, why is it vignetted around the side? What's going on there? Is it the ND filter? And the answer was yes, and I was surprised as well. So I just did a quick test in the garden, and I pushed this thing on as hard as I could. And you can just see there's some small little things there, but not as much as before. And when I went and checked this in the monitor, I really couldn't see anything, although these are admittedly quite small. But I did go inside to have a check, and I really can't see anything. So I think the FPV view is very slightly different than the recording view. Ultimately, I think it's down to this. There's this little ridge in the inside of the ND filter which is supposed to sort of keep it tight, and that's kind of pushed up and it stops it going on as far as it wants to. So that's something to correct for me. So kind of ignore the fact that it's got that weird surround in the footage for now. Okay, with that said, let's get on and show you what this looked like. Now, this is the raw footage. This is shot at 2.5K at 50 frames per second. And as far as raw footage goes, I think this looks pretty good. This is on the little 2.5-inch Pavo 25. It's not too bad for the shakes. You can see like little bits and pieces, but there's no like huge vibrations. It didn't do anything too crazy on this. This is the sort of cine whoop, and it's really not very stable. If I try and do things like dives and that, it has terrible yaw washout, which still hasn't been fixed. Beta FPV, when I did the initial review of this, said, oh, we're going to fix that, can you just not mention it? And I was like, no, I'll put it out there, and when you fix it I'll do another video about it. But they haven't come back with a fix. In fact, they haven't talked to me at all since then. But that's beside the point. Anyway, I did a bunch of flights with the ND filter on, and then fortunately I did take it off, so we got some footage of showing the full screen, which looks like this. Fortunately I flew pretty much the same routes, except the cows kept moving and spoilt my fun there. So I didn't see anything particularly different here. There was maybe a little bit of jello creeping in at certain sort of maneuvers, but again, it looks not too bad at all for a sort of camera without any stabilization. It does seem to be a little bit slow on handling light changes. I do pick that up, but yeah, overall not too bad. I would say slightly better than how the Runcam Thumb looked on a sort of raw basis. Anyway, let's switch over to a different quad. Okay, so we've moved the camera over to the Nazgul, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do most of the flights with the ND filter on. I just did one with the ND filter off last time because it is pretty sunny, and we'll at least do one with it off, see how it goes. Let's get going. Okay, so here we go. This time the ND filter seems like I've shoved it on a little bit better, but not quite all the way, and it seems to be slightly angled, and I think that's down to that little ripple in that stuff we had. Once again, I think the sort of the base footage that comes off is actually not too bad. It doesn't have the same amount of vibrations as the Runcam or Runcam Thumb Pro. It seems to be fairly good actually in what you see, at least from the editor window. I'm sure if I zoomed in full screen, you know, we'd pick up more little issues and problems. But I'm doing the same old things in the sort of Cinewhoop style. I try and fly like a Cinewhoop, mostly because that pavo is very dodgy. If you do any sort of dives, the yaw washout is real with that one. But on a 5-inch, I try you know, all the normal stuff. We'll have some split S's, we'll have some sort of light acro, but I try and vaguely go around the same sort of loop, sort of under the trees here, along the field, so we're doing sort of fast and low, and we'll go up around the trees, and we'll try and get in, like, you know, the inverted yaw spin or flying up high, because going up high often is something that induces a bit of jello in quads, just because it's more windy up there. But yeah, that looks pretty good. And once again, we did some stuff again without the ND filter, which looks like this. Now, in all instances, the sound you're hearing is the sound that was recorded in the HD camera, although it came out very loud and I had to push it down a bit in the editor. But again, the footage without the filter looks okay. I can detect a little bit of jello creeping in there. There's just a little bit more shaky than it was previously, but again, it looks fairly good in the raw, and I wanted to show you these things in the raw before we started getting to Gyroflow to see what could be done there. But let's get on and do that now and see what we can get. Now, the first bit of footage I'm going to be stabilising is this stuff with the little Pavo 25, just to give you the quick reference again. Now, first I went in and I did the sort of default stabilisation as it was, and this got us this result. Well, it zoomed in enough to get rid of the circular stuff around the edges there, but to me it looks kind of worse. There's these little sort of jittery bits that's in there at most times, and I even tried the thing I was doing with the Runcam Thumb Pro, which is to put in like 500 sync points and see what happened there, and it didn't get any better. And so I talked to Hawkeye and they said, oh, use this is our preset, all you have to do is drop it in. And I did that, and the result we got is this one, which looks pretty good. There are a couple of little issues I've got with this. First off, it's quite heavily stabilised. What happens, I'll show you in a second, you just literally drag this preset in there and it makes all the changes you wanted to. So it's slightly over stabilised for sort of regular FPV, but if you're all cine whooping, then this is ideal. Secondly, it zooms in quite a bit more, so your camera angle has to be right. In this case it's not, but I have to say it does do the job. So then I turned to the 5-inch quad to see what that could do. And once again, I'll give you the quick reference footage for this one. This is the raw stuff, and it's pretty good. As I said, it's definitely slightly worse on the 5-inch. You've got a couple of noticeable shakes, but overall I think that the raw footage is not bad at all for an unstabilised camera. But let's go ahead and we'll use that Hawkeye preset they gave us and see what this looks like. Let's just do this little tree dive first, so we've got sort of references of how this looked, and that is like that, not too bad. And now let's move over to the stabilised version, and here we go. It looks much the same, but it's taken out those little ripples. I'm not sure here if the shadow is a slight zoom in and out of Gyroflow, or it's just me changing height slightly, but it looks better. I have to say, I'm getting a couple of sort of weird glitches every sort of couple of seconds I just get this weird glitchy frame which doesn't look as nice. There's like a bit of noise just appears somewhere. I'm trying to figure out if that's just me or it's on my editor or what. But yeah, I've got to admit, this definitely does stabilize the footage. It might not be quite the way I'd want to stabilize it, but I do like the fact that there's just this sort of preset you drag over and then you press go and it comes out with a stabilized result, which is, you know, hats off to Hawkeye there, because they've done something other vendors haven't. They've basically said do this, and even if you don't like it, at least it's, you know, a base where you can work from and try and get the best sort of footage you can. So let's go into GyroFlow and take a look at the workflow we use to get this sort of stabilization and some of the other stuff I'll be showing you. Okay, what I've got here is GyroFlow, and I've actually put it back to its default parameters just to show the differences that go on when you use one of these presets. So I'm going to go down here to my footage, here it is, and I haven't done number 6. This was on the 2.5 inch, and if you look there, I've just taken off the ND filter. So I want to see how that turns out like, because it's not all super smooth. It's been a little bit hit and miss. I'll give you some examples later. Anyway, all I do, drag that in. Now I was a touch confused here because when I looked at this video file, it said contains gyro. That doesn't mean the gyro is embedded in the video file. It means that the GCSV file is in the same directory, so it's located it and it's loaded it, so you don't have to manually load the motion data in. The other thing you notice is that it automatically gets the profile somehow, and that's right. And so this is the defaults. So what I then need to do is go back here and take this file that I've got, which is called the Naked 4K preset.gyroflow, and just drop that in there, and you'll see a couple of different things happen. First off, you've got a sync search size of 5 seconds, which is different. You've got, if we look here, it uses essential matrix, which is slightly different to normal. The default smoothness goes up to 0.5, that's quite heavy. The zooming speed is up to 4 seconds, which is different. Just change this export setting to 264. Yeah, and so what we need to do there is, as per normal, where's the bit where I take the lens off? Let's just turn that off for now. Okay, take the lens off there, and we start flying there. So I'm just going to mark that bit, then land there. Okay, then I'm going to do the normal thing. I'm going to use all these defaults, and I'm going to say auto sync, and it's going to go ahead and do that. Perhaps takes a little bit longer. When I first did this, I was convinced it was taking too long, but I found out there's this certain thing I can do in GyroFlow where if I put my mouse in some sort of certain position, or I've not clicked on something, it seems to pause. At first I thought if you weren't in the active window it would stop, but that's not the case. I don't know what it was, but basically your export should take the normal amount of time. Anyway, once you've done that, just click export and let it rip, and we'll see what the results are in a second, or 6 minutes ish. And here's the results we get from that stabilization, which aren't bad. There's definitely a worse result. Oh, I'm getting a worse result without the ND filter. It looks pretty okay to start with, but I know as we turn around and go back, there's a bit more shaking than I'd got from other results where I did have the filter. In terms of the 5-inch, this did pretty much the same thing, where we seem to actually get jello coming back into the frame. Here is some of that footage stabilized, and you can see that the general gist of the footage is smooth, but you can literally see the rolling shutter and that jello effect taking place there. So it's kind of interesting. It's sort of smoothed out the stuff it sort of can see, so it looks smooth around the corners and stuff, but you can still see that jello. So the use of the ND filter here is really recommended, and especially if you're flying on anything but something very small like a 2.5-inch quad. So 5 inches for sure, and you still need to play around with the mounts. I just wanted to figure out is where those weird frames are coming from. I'm just in QuickTime at the moment, just playing the stabilised video, and I've just hit play. You just see that little flicker there, and if I rewind that, I can see that there's just a few frames which look like haven't been rendered properly. Here is all sharp. If we move forwards, you see it starts turning there and it looks like it's overly compressed. It almost looks like a weird watercolour painting. So you've got about 3 or 4 frames just here where it looks just like it hasn't rendered the frame properly, and we've got just a few nasty frames, and when we play that at full speed it looks just like that weird little flicker, which is really odd. And the original files don't have them, so I can only think that GyroFlow is writing out weird stuff sometimes, and I'm not sure why. I did have this originally with some of the GyroFlow results, although in my last lot of stuff I didn't get that, so I'm not sure what's happening. Perhaps that's something I'll have to pass back. Hopefully this sort of stuff's not happening with you, but I just thought I'd point that one out as I can't really explain it. Okay, there you go. That's the Hawkeye Naked 4K camera, and I'm going to stop here because this is already a long video and I've still got more sort of experiments to do. I think I've repaired the ND filter. Basically there was a piece of tape on the inside of the lens. I've smoothed that down, so hopefully now it's put on, it hasn't created that lump and it's all the way on. I think that certainly is as far as it can be, so I'll be checking before I go out that there's no circular thing around there. A couple of things I neglected to mention about usability of this thing. So we've got the, as mentioned, the SD card holder there, so that won't come out. But if you just plug it in via USB on your computer, it's a mass storage device. You can just drag all your clips over and work on them that way. The other thing, when we were going through the menu, I noticed I couldn't turn loop recording off, and I thought that loop recording might be like it would record the same footage in a loop, because that's kind of how it sounds. But I did have one of those clips there that went into about 6 minutes, and what happens after 5 minutes, it went onto a new file, so not so bad. So any downsides to this? Well, physically it can be a bit tricky. You see it here at the same angle as the camera, and this means that my battery has to think about where it can come to. It can't come all the way up because it would hit that, so it has to go a bit further back, and this is more of a problem on a smaller quad, depending where your mount point is. On this one the mount point is sort of further back. If it was right at the front there it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but it is something to think about. The results we got were generally pretty good. As all these things that use GyroFlow, the mount is pretty crucial, because if you've got vibrations going straight up to the camera, then the gyro is just going to record all the shaking and it's not going to be able to do much with it. So some sort of decent TPU mount on any of your quads will help an awful lot. That said, I felt the raw footage you got from this has been pretty good, especially on the smaller 2.5-inch Cinewhoop with the ND filter on board. That was actually pretty good footage before we started smoothing out, and the smoothing in GyroFlow worked pretty well. I think it's really nice that Hawkeye giving a preset to basically drag in and just go with it. Even if you don't like it, as I said, you've at least got a basis to work from, and you can change settings and see how they come out. That said, the sort of smoothing and results I got from GyroFlow was a little bit mixed. Some stuff was really good, some stuff wasn't so good depending on the circumstances. And I'm still getting that weird glitchy frame thing, which I'm going to have to investigate. If you've seen that and you know what the answer is, please let me know, because I'd really like to get rid of it. It's quite annoying. Anyway, I'm going to do some more flying with this to experiment with what I can do and what sort of results I can get from it, to really see what's best. So come back to this. That said, the weather in the UK has taken a turn for the direction of winter. It's been really bad lately, so hopefully we'll get some time to go and fly this. And I'm going to concentrate on flying it mostly on the 5-inch, because that's the sort of more demanding thing, and it's more fun to fly. I don't really enjoy flying those Cinewhoops much. They sort of buzz about and they make a lot of noise, and you can't really do exciting things with them. I really enjoy flying this, so it's staying on here for now. So stay tuned for the follow-up on that. In the meantime, thanks very much for Hawkeye for providing this and a little screen for review, and giving me lots of advice about how to use the sort of best terms of mounts and GyroFlow and that sort of thing. And I hope they continue to make improvements in their firmware and their presets or whatever they have to get the very best out of this. Anyway, there'll of course be links down below for where you can check it out in more detail. This has been the Hawkeye 4K Naked review, and I hope it's been helpful. I will catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.